We deal with one of the most important and fundamental and fascinating sugyas in the Shabbos, which is Nogea Alat Halocha L'Maisa, and that is Amira L'Nochri. Amira L'Nochri Shavuos. And this is a halacha that we find Kama V'Kama Pa'omim B'Shas, Shabbos Kuf Nun, Gittin Daf Ches, and above Metzia Daf Tzaddik, the Gemara is Mesupik, is Amira L'Nochri Shavuos only by Shabbos, or by all the lavim, all the avedas shebetayra, and it's a boya deroi if shita, and a big machloikes in Rishonim, in Shechanor is nifsak, in Orachayim, in Even Ezer, lagabe the Iso Sirus, Amira L'Nochri Shavuos is not only by Shabbos, but also b'shar Isurei Toiro. In Parshas Boy, Kol Malocha Lo Ye'oseh Boheim, Rashi writes, Afiru Alidei Acherim. And the source of Rashi is in Mechilta, and L'cha'oira, according to the Mechilta, it's a Nisa D'Oraisa. However, the Ramban, on the spot of Parshas Boy, Ramban al Torah writes, nobody thinks that Amira L'Nochri is a Nisa D'Oraisa. The Mechilta is only an Asmachta Ba'alma, but both the Yereim and the Smag Lo Ta'asa Ayin Hei, the Smag maintains that according to the Mechilta, it's an Issa D'Oraisa. Mishnah Brura, Shin Zayin, Pshitale, he doesn't bring this mag, that it's an Issa D'Rabonan, and even the Mechilta is only an Asmach L'Bialma. Ben Kach U Ben Kach. Even if the Mechilta would be an Issa D'Oraisa, Halachic is Tome de Gemora, and Amira L'Nochri is a Shvus, and an Issa D'Rabonan, and not more. Reb Shloime Kruger, in two of his Svarim, Chochmah Shloime, Shulchan Aruch Orachayim, and in Shin Zayin, and in Sefer HaChaim, Al Shulchan Aruch Orachayim, Siman Reish Mem Daled. I don't waste my precious time just on silly research, which is no nafka min al-halacha, but I would guess that Reb Shloime Kruger wrote more Torah than any other Achroim. It's amazing how much this person wrote. The Chidu made a lot of Svarim, but I think Reb Shloime Kruger went far beyond him. And Reb Shloime Kruger wrote many Svarim. Every Sefer has a different name. You need to be a Gaon just to remember the names of a Svarim. So I wrote more than 30 Svarim, but all my Svarim have the same name, because I was afraid if I'm going to give you Sefer another name, I myself won't remember the name of my Svarim. And therefore, I decided to give them all the same name. So Sefer HaChaim, of Shulchan Aruch Orachayim, Reb Shloime Kruger has a few Svarim. On Shulchan Aruch Orachayim, one of them is Sefer HaChaim Reish Mem Daled. And in both sources, Reb Shloime Kruger says, maybe there's no stira between the Mechilta and the Gemara. And the Mechilta deals with a poel. If you pay someone, then Yad Poel Ki Yad Balabayis, then it would be an Issa D'Oraisa. A Shliach who's not getting paid is only a Shavuos. And the basis of this Svora is the Machna Ephraim, Siman Yud Aleph Hilchos Shluchin. The Machna Ephraim writes a Gevaldige Chiddush, which I dealt with many times, many different sources in my Sforim. Machna Ephraim writes, you can have a guy, your worker, your employee, build a mica on your roof, and you say the bracha. So the chiddush is not that you could build a mica on your guy, but you say the bracha. You're not doing anything. Why? Yad Poel Ki Yad Balabayis. And the Machna Ephraim quotes the Pri Chodesh, who was his predecessor, Lagabi Tfilas Kelem, Yordei Sim Kuf Chof. A guy is Tefillah Kelem, and you make the bracha, because Yad Poel Ki Yad Balabayis. I myself, various different sources on my Svarim wrote, Yad Poel Ki Yad Balabayis is only a din d'Rabbanan bedina momenes belvad. And the only place we find Yad Poel Ki Yad Balabayis is Glabei Poel Sha'amagbiya Mitzias Mitziyosav L'Raboy. Now, if you have a worker for a certain job, Mitziyosav La'atzmoy, but if you have like a shamus, and some people have an employee that does everything for them. He buys their stuff in the Makolet, he takes care of the bank account, he's their driver, he drives their kids to the nursery and to Cheder, and whenever they need something, he's like a Mishamish. That is the poil on which Chazal say, if you find Mitzias, Mitziyosav L'Raboy. because you're meshubah to me with everything. Whatever you do is for me. And that is the din of Yad Porkiat Balabayis. But it has nothing to do with Ein Shlichus Lenachri. And if you build with the Goy a Maike, or Tvilas Kalim, how could you say a bracha? You're not even Mekayim the mitzvah. Because Ein Shlichus Lenachri. But the Shloime Kruger built on the Machne Ephraim, and the Pri Chodesh dealing with mitzvahs asay, Tvilas Kalim and Asiyas Amaike. The Fidarkom, Reb Shloime Kruger says, Legabe Amira Lenachri. If he's your poel, it would be an Issa Diuraisa. Shalosh Tshuva Zekana Haroin. Zekana Haroin was Rabban Volkan. Before the Holocaust, he was the Rav in Pinsk. And in Orchaim Siman Tezvov, he has a very harsh psak, and he says all those people that have women or goyim working in their house, Shabbos, it is a very common practice in Europe and in America, less than it's a soil. People have non-Jews, doing their dishes, cleaning the floors, Shabbos, and various different malachas. And he writes, it's an issa diuraisa, because you're paying those people, and by a poel v'sachar, Amira Nochri is an issa diuraisa, and there would be no kulas of Amira Nochri. Not Chodesh B'Sekona, or Tzar Harabim, or whatever kulas there are. If you're paying him, that's an issa diuraisa based on Reb Shloime Kruger. And I think ein halacha Reb Shloime Kruger. Because Yad Porkiat Balabayis is a very limited halacha. V'shelo kedivrei Machne Ephraim. Machne Ephraim has another mahalach in that same siman as well. But anyway, lahalocha kaim alon Amira lenochri shvos. Rashi of the Zohar Tezvov, also a gewaltige Chiddush. Rashi writes Amira lenochri is also memtzor cheftzach uvedaber dovo divrei Kabbalah. L'chayre divrei Kabbalah chamurim et divrei Sofrim. But Amira lenochri is a shvos kal. And a shench of ches we paskin mutar l'chayre shem b'sekona. Other shusim are not mutar l'chayre shem b'sekona. How could divrei Kabbalah be kal and divrei Sofrim? So the reason Amira Nochri is a shvus kal, erev and samaches, shvus shem bo mais. But it would be a big chiddush to say shvus shem bo mais. After pieces of divrei Kabbalah, yoyse kal me shvus sheyesh bo mais me divrei Sofrim. Lechaoira, hamishkan hazguli shel divrei Sofrim keneged divrei Kabbalah would be stronger than the difference yesh bo maisa or ein bo maisa. And therefore I think the poskim maintain the Rambam. And the Rambam writes, Perek Vav Alocha Aleph Me'elchas Shabbos. Chachamim asru mira nochri shelo tehei Shabbos kalo ba'enov v'yavoy la'asois malocha b'yatzmoi. And the Rambam writes, Beferish medivrei Sofrim. Lo kedivrei Rashi. Maybe there would be shnei dinim ba'amira l'nochri. And two great achroine basroi, right? Shnei dinim. Not bris. Avnei Nezer, Tov Kuf Chavov, and the Kovet Shiurim. So Rabbi Chana was a shtickle Talmud of Reb Chaim. He learned a half year by Reb Chaim, and 3 or 4 years by Reb Shimon. Kovet Shiurim, Beitzer, Siman Os Memtes, the Kovet Shiurim, like Avnei Nezer writes. Amira Nochri, when the guy does a malacha on Shabbos, that is Shaloi Te'ekal Shabbos Kalabeinov, because he's like your shaliach. But if you tell him on Shabbos to do a malacha after Shabbos, what would the issue be? That is or you're not allowed to talk and ask somebody to do a malacha on Shabbos, even though he does a malacha after Shabbos. Lani is the IT. I generally don't like the mahalach of Shnei Dinim for a very simple reason. Why doesn't the Rambam write Shnei Dinim? Why doesn't Rashi write Shnei Dinim? So we bring together Rashi and the Rambam, we're Machadish Shnei Dinim, but obviously it is not Teros and Sharishoyim. And therefore I think, Bein le Rashi ve Bein le Rambam, whether I tell a goy on Shabbos to do a malacha on Shabbos, whether I tell him Erev Shabbos to do a malacha on Shabbos, whether I tell him on Shabbos to do a malacha after Shabbos. In all three different scenarios, Chacham Mochoishe Shelo Tehei Shabbos Kalo B'Yenov V'Yavoy Lasos Malacha. So it is a harchava. I always prefer one complicated din than shnei dinim pshutim. The bigger chiddush would be Ali B'Darashi. If the entire Isser is Memsar Chetzach V'Daber Davar, why would there be an Isser to tell him Erev Shabbos to do a Malacha on Shabbos? But this is also not a Tema Be'inai. The Iker Isser of Amira and Ochri is telling on Shabbos to do a Malacha on Shabbos. It is Ma'ain Gzeira L'Gzeira. And Chacham were Marchev the Isser. You're not allowed to tell him Erev Shabbos to do a Malacha on Shabbos. You're not allowed to tell him Shabbos to do a Malacha on Motzei Shabbos. It is Ka'ain Gzeira L'Gzeira. So I wrote a tshuva not so long ago about the concept of Gzeira L'Gzeira. I would like to send it to the Kollel because there are some Kedushim there. But many times we find in Shas Gzeira L'Gzeira, I would say hundreds of times in Shas and Poiskim. So I tried to write some kronim in the concept of Gzeira L'Gzeira. But Bein Rashi, Bein Rambam, there's no reason to be Mechadesh Shnei Dinim, two different fundamentals. Chazal Oslo Amira Nochri, and Me'ain Gzeira L'Gzeira, they answered all the different scenarios. Raya Ledovar, we are more makel by Amira Nochri number 2 and 3 than by number 1. And this brings us to a gewaldige sugya of Remiza. So the din of Remiza, you're not allowed to be Merames, and that is in Shin Zayin Sif Chof Beis. Whenever Amira Nochri is also, Remiza is also That's the Ramah. כל דובר שעושה לא ימלא אינו יהודי לעשויסו בשבס, עושה לרמוז לא לעשויסוי. אבל מותר לרמז לא מלוכה לעשויס אחר השבס. Tell him on the Shabbos to do a malocha on Shabbos, even a Mizah is also. But you are allowed to be merames Shabbos to do a malocha after a Shabbos. You're not allowed to tell him, but you are allowed to be merames. הרי שכאילו יותר ברמיזה לעשות מלוכה אחר השבס than on a Shabbos. And the post can write the other way around as well. Remiza be'erev Shabbos, לעשות מלוכה b'Shabbos is also mutar. And this proves there's the Iker Isra Amira Nochri and Tosefes. And not Shnei Dinim, but rather one din and a Tosefes. How would I say it? 1.5 dinim instead of Shnei Dinim? Ikar v'Tosefes. Arba dinim ba'amir beremiza. I say arba dinim. You don't like Shnaim and you do like 4? No, when I say Arba dinim, I don't mean in Lomdis, in the Geder, but 3 different levels of Remiza. Ramo clearly says, Osa lermois. Mogen Rom Lamed Aleph, Mishnah Brura Yevov, Agavaldige Chiddush. So I'm reading the Mishnah Brura. Osa lermois. The Gam Ze Bechal Amira La'en Yehudim. Kivin Shali De Remiza, so Isa B'Shabbos. על כן, עושה לו אם אין יהודי שיקנה אחות מוי כדי שיובן שיעשה לפחם שבראש הנר. You're not allowed to tell him clean your nose, and he's supposed to understand that the ner is not burning well because there's pecham, take it off. Why would somebody understand when you tell him clean your nose that he needs to fix the ner? I don't know. It was always said that Jews have long noses. Maybe it's like a net, I don't know. Why would the guy understand when you tell him to kaneh achoit macho? Then he should clean the net. But maybe that was like a code that everybody knew. It's like a code. כוסף המשנה ברורה, אבל כשאומר הרמיזה לאין יהודי שלא בלושן ציווי, כגון שאומר הנר אין אומר יפה, or you tell the guy, I can't read, you know, I don't have enough light. And he understands that he needs to לעשות הפחם על השנה, that's מותר. And this is a gewaltige chiddush. We are allowed to express a need or desperation, and the guy would understand what we expect him to do. So which remiza is also a command. You're not allowed to tell him, do this, even though you're talking in codes. You're not taking him, you're not telling him putting on the light, but you're telling him, clean your nose. Or you would tell him, give me more air, and he understands it's not air that you need, but light. A command, even though it's indirect, is also expressing a need is mutalachatchila. That's the Mughal Rom and the Mishnah Berurah. Are you allowed to point to something? You forgot to put on the air conditioner. You call a guy and you point to the air conditioner. L'chayre misvara, I would say we should be making more when you're just pointing and you're not saying anything than to say, it's hot in here. I forgot to put on the air conditioner. But the halacha is not so. Chayodam, Klal Samach Weiss, Siv Weiss says you're not allowed to point. And to me it seems somewhat of a chiddush. Chazal asu Amira lenachi. And if I'm not saying anything, I'm just pointing, it's a chiddush to say this is also. And especially to say, I'm allowed to express a need, but I'm not allowed to point. What I say now, I'm just making you realize a chiddush, but it's not a perch. Yeah? So the Chayodam maintains, pointing is like a command. But if you express a need, that is yoise lekula, then pointing to something. Lechayra, the Mishnah Berurah is chayrak on the Chayodam, and the Mishnah Berurah is makel to point. Siv Kotten Ayin Aleph, Siv Kotten Ayin Vov. The Mishnah Berurah writes, you are allowed to express a need, Siv Kotten Ayin Aleph. ולקרויס לאין יהודי להרויס לוי ולוי לוי מלוי לכולי על מישורי. To call a goy and you show him something, you're not saying anything, לכולי על מישורי. But it troubled me, how come the Mishnah Berurah doesn't quote the Chayodam? So the Mishnah Berurah had different levels of sforim that he used. I think I told you once, whenever he quotes Shalos Tshuvas, tzorach b'dika acharav. Because the Mishnah Berurah didn't have any tshuvas for him. I think he had a very small library, and my feeling is when he decided to write the Mishnah Berurah, he purchased or borrowed all the Sifrei Yesod HaOrachaim, the Mama Mordechai, the Yeshuas Yankov, the Moiruk Tzio, Tosefes Shabbos, Oiles Shabbos, Shulchan Aruch Harav, but he didn't have tshuvas. Whenever he quotes tshuvas, he relies on one of two sforim. Or the Pischei Tshuva. Now, we all know the Pischei Tshuva Yordei, but there is a small sefer Pischei Tshuva on Orachaim, or Pischei Oilam. Both these forms were Gedolei Lita, one generation before the Mishnah Berurah. And both of these forms are a compilation, primarily of Tshuvas. And both were extremely inaccurate. And both quotes for him full of mistakes, and the Mishnah Berurah relied on them. So whenever the Mishnah Berurah brings Tshuvas, there are quite a few mistakes in the Mishnah Berurah when he quotes Tshuvas. But the Sforim al Shulchan Aruch, there are Sforim shelo yizazu yodoi metorich yodom, like the Chayodam. There are Sforim that he quotes from time to time, like the Yeshuas Yankov. But it's a pela otzum that the Mishnah Berurah would be makel pointing and not even quoting the Chayodam, because it's not Shalos Tshuvas. The Mishnah Berurah learned the Chayodam, and therefore I think it's a mistake. Sivkot 9 Aleph is on Sif Yud Ches. Sif Yud Ches, we learn Ramiza number 4. So up to this moment, I said there are 3 dinim at Ramiza. תקנא אחות עמך, אלא מי זה בלושן ציווי, also. Expressing a need, muta. Pointing, chayot hamasers. Number 4 is kol ha'machaba einoi mafsid. And that is fine. Twice in Shulchan Aruch, Shin Zayin Yutes, Shin Lamed Daled Chavod. So let's have a look at the Sif Yutes, Shin Zayin. Schoir הנפסדת בשבס על ידי גשומים, אוי דבר אחר, אוי עושה ביטקי דמאי ומפסד ממוינוי, או שניטרו חובש של יין והולך לאיבוד, מותר לקרס לעניד, אף על פי שבד ידי שעניד יצל ממוינוי. וכן מותר לומר, לעין יהודי כל המצל אינו מפסד, כמו בדליקה. ויש מי שאומר, שלא יתירו, אלו בדליקה דווקא. That's a Gemara Mefureshes Lagabi Dleika. And there's a Machlokes Rishonim. Does the same rule apply to every sudden hefsed that was not anticipated, wasn't expected? The reason Chazal are Mekel, Kol HaMachaba Einoi Mafsid, because the person is traumatized, and he might be Machaba Ba'atzmai. And that's why they wanted to give him another option. He shouldn't be nichshal in Chilul Shabbos. So the first opinion is, this rule is not only by Leika, that we find the Gemara, every unexpected hefsed. And it is on this halacha that the Mishnah Berurah writes, if you're just pointing, l'kuli alma mutar. But the heter of pointing is only by hefsed pitomi, by an unexpected hefsed. So the Mishnah Berurah writes, even though some machlokes two opinions in Shulchan Aruch, but to point l'kuli alma mutar. But he definitely agrees with the Chayodam that pointing, when it's not a hefsed bilti tzafui, is vadayos.
The Mishnah Berurah is based on Yerabba. It is a chiluk. He doesn't say pointing. He just says to call the guy. Goes down the block, call the guy to the house. And when the guy comes, he's going to see it's the halacha that's before Shulchan Aruch in Shin Lamed Daled Chavod. Here it's from the Rosh, and the Rosh says that just lekroisa, come.
Yeah, but the lashon of the Mishnah Berurah is laharos loy.
Right. It sounds like from El Yerab. Laharos means come to my house. Look, this is my house and it's burning down. Or this is my house and he sees the labdafka to point to his, like to point to the light switch, to point to the hose.
So you say that laharos loy doesn't mean showing him ani de tnua, but rather calling him to the house. He should see. So this brings us to question number 4.
Even though it's very clear, so it might be the same thing, because it's very clear once you call the guy to see your house burning down. It's very clear, but it's not maybe pointing is the Mechaber says that Lashon Shin Lamed Daled, Afal Bishul Vada Yechava Kishiyavoi, because he's going to come, he sees you calling to your burning house, he's going to...
So where did the Mishnah Berurah take the Lashon Laharos Lo? He just means...
he quotes it...
Oilas Shabbos and El
The
Yerab.
Lashon Bemis, it's a little bit not as Lashon is the El Yerab. The Ray says L'Krois La'akum, which is the Lashon Mechaber Shin Lamed Daled. It's not exact.
I hear. So once again, so the Mishnah Berurah definitely doesn't disagree with the Chayodam, and therefore pointing would be awesome. So I am matir when the lights went out, or you forgot to put on the mazgan to call a goy and to express a need. And some of the Bonim were choylek based on this halacha. You could only call a goy by dleika, or by another sudden hefsed mamoin. Otherwise, it would be also to call him. And I say, no. When you call him, when your house is burning down, calling him is like Amira Nochri, because it's so obvious why you called him. So the etzem calling a goy would be like pointing, and that would be awesome. But if you call a goy to your house and he has no idea why you called me, that wouldn't be an issue at all. You just call the guy to your house. What would be this? And once he's in your house, you have the heter of sifkot nayim vov, of expressing a need. And therefore, I do think you could call a guy to your house and then tell him, I have a problem here, a problem there, and b'derech hamizah, he should be mekel, because the Isser, calling a guy to your house would be defined as Amira and Achri only by Leiker. When he's 50 meters from your house and he understands why you called him. So that would be like, at least like pointing a finger. But if you're calling to your house and he would have no idea why you called him to your house, and then you're expressing a need, that would be mutar lechatchila. So that is my opinion.
From the examples the Rav chose, the Rav is learning that the Remiza is going to help for Hana also. I mean, the Rav said the lights were off, but the Maskan wasn't on.
Okay, we will deal with that, right now, instead of pushing it off. So there's a gewaldige kasha. How could there be a heter of Remiza in any form when, even if I said nothing, osa lehenois, nachisha osa v'rocha b'shvil yisrael, osa lehenois. And also there's a chavis machor. You need to tell him, don't do it. So how could there be a heter of Remiza? So I want to make a few comments. Lecha oira I b'dedi talia. My first machshava was a gewaldige chiddush, and I really don't think it's right. Even though I say, if I would live 900 years ago, this is what I would say. But whenever I use this phrase, I say that I'm fully aware where I am and when I am. And probably there's a good reason I didn't live 900 years ago. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wouldn't want me to say what I have to say. Or he wouldn't want people to listen to what I have to say. Have Amina Goy shebu ma'atzmoi chomer tfei meremiza muteres. The Mishnah Berurah writes twice, and l'chol it's mufurish in the Gemara in the Rishonim, that chovis machoa, when a goy comes on his own to do a malacha for a Jew, is mivnei shenere keshlichoi. If a goy comes to your house and he does something for you, nere keshlichoi, people will assume he's your shaliach. And if he's your shaliach, that's a Amira Nachri, which is an Isabel. So this is also exeida l'exeida. Chovis machoa, mishum shenere keshlichoi, and even if he is your shaliach, it's only Amira Nachri. But if you tell him, oh, it's so hot in here, it's not nere keshlichoi. Because the person standing next to you, if a guy walks into your house and he puts on the mazgan, what would the person assume? Probably you asked him to do it. Otherwise, how does he know? But if a guy comes into your house and you say it's so cold, so the person standing next to you, it's quite obvious you didn't tell him to do anything, you just expressed a need. So it would be yoiser kal, expressing a need, they're not saying anything. In the mivchan of nere keshlichoi. But that wouldn't solve the problem of osa lehenois. Because the reason she'osa lehenois ma'maleches nachri has nothing to do with nere keshlichoi. And that's a machloikes Rashi in Tosfos. What is the isser of lehenois ma'masa nachri? It's a machloikes important as well. Whether it's meshum she'osa lehenois ma'masa nachri, or exera that he will tell him, and not mishum nere keshlichoi. So according to both these svaras, what I said is not reasonable. If the Issa Lahenois would be the same Yesod and the same rationale as Chovis Machom and Shenere Keshlichoi, then my argument would be a very powerful one. But Chovis Machom is Mishum Shenere Keshlichoi. The Issa Anoah has a different reasoning. And if the Issa Anoah is Mepnei She'osa Lahenois Melechas Shabbos, or Mechashash Shema Yoim Aloi, so why would expressing a need be Yoisa Kula than he did it on his own? Shum Kach Ozrani. So Reb Shlomo Zalman in Mincha Shloim Chelik Beis.
With the Rav, except the Jewish sufferer says like this. His argument is that it's because of Shema Yom Rilon. If you do it with Remiza, that's a hecker. If you do it, if you know that you have to do it in a weird way, you won't come to say.
I'm very happy to hear that. Very happy to hear that. It's not such a stark svara, but I'm happy that somebody thought the same. So Rav Shlomo Zalman is Tameya and the Shmiya Shabbos Kel Chosai, which is strange to me, because I had a very close relationship with Rav Noiviet, and Rav Noiviet told me many times, this is not my sefer. This is the Shlomo Zalman sefer. So it is strange that Mincha Shloima is Tameya and Shmiya Shabbos, and the Mincha Shloima is like, how could the Shmiya Shabbos write a heter, a broad-based heter of expressing a need, when it's also lehenos? So Rav Shlomo Zalman writes, expressing a need is only mutter by a Shavuos. Lo ho'ilu chachumim klum. Because even by a Shavuos there's a chovis machor. And even by a Shavuos there's also lehenos mamasa nochi. So what's the teretz? The source of this halacha, that it is legitimate to express a need, is the Tefes Yisrael. Nobody before him said that. In Kol Shabbos. And the Tefes Yisrael deals with the Malacha D'Oraisa. And I think that Hosarata Pecham Min Haner is a Malacha D'Oraisa. It's not a Shavuos. It's Mavio. Because it burns better. So what would be the teretz? I think these three halachas, Chovis Machor, Iser Hanoah, Remiza Hamuteres, are three sides of the same coin. Most coins have two sides. In halacha, some coins have three sides. And these are three sides of the same coin. Kavanosi loima. But oisan hu oifanim shemuta lehen ois mamas anochri ein choyves machor. Because ein choyves machor, yesh remiza hamuteres. In every case in which osa lehen ois, chayev limchois. And if chayev limchois, it goes without saying that there's also an isser in expressing a need. Shelo kedivrei Mishnah Socher, Shelo Mishnah Rishoina, Shel Mincha Zosher. But these three halachas are the same. So where do we find the heter of Remiza Muteres? Haner einoi doilek yotzei. We have a ner, but it doesn't give sufficient light. Bereisha involved mavur lehedya. If you have one ner, and a goy is mad like an addition in there, you could take benefit from it. And that is the case in which it's muter lehenois. Kishe muter lehenois ein choy velimchois, ki mavur b'toises av kufchof beis mesechet Shabbos. And in that case, you could express a need. And that is the teretz. And that is why there is no stealer. And this brings us to the din of mutar lahanois mener noisaf. And in this halacha I have a big vikuach with the Igris Moshe. So I said before, you could call a goy and tell him it's hot, we forgot to put on the air conditioner. One problem would be, could you b'chlal call a goy to your house? And I explained before why I think it's mutar. So the Minchas Yitzchak and the Igris Moshe have a machloikis regarding calling a goy to your house to have him put on the air conditioner. Could you tell him put on the air conditioner? So the machloikis is primarily Hakol Choylen Eitzel Tzino Simen Reish Ayin Vav Siv Hey. Hakol Choylen Eitzel Tzino. The source of this din is a Mordechai, Shabbos Perek Aleph, Tov Nun Beis. And the Mordechai writes, V'shem Raboisav, that you could call a goy if it's very cold in the winter and ask him to stoke the fire or heat your home. And the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch when he brings this din, Reish Ayin Vav Sif Hey, is בארץ אויס קרויס, מותר לאין יהודי לעשות מדורה בשביל קטנים ומתורם גדולים לסחמם בוי. ואפילו בשביל גדולים מותר עם הקור גדול, שהכל חוי למייסל צינו. ולא כאויסם שנויג עם היתר, אף על פי שאין הקור גדול, ביום ההוא. So the Machaber, on one hand, is Makel. You could call a guy to heat your home in Makor Godel. But he warns, like the Oisam, Shenoigam Neta Imena Kor Godel. The Mordechai brings this halacha. Mordechai writes, Hakal Choyle Meisel Tzino. And the Loshen, the Machaber is Matik. And the Mordechai writes, Vafilu Ein Choylem. But it's Tzar. Vamuto Bishul Tzar. And he calls the Gemara Ksubas Dav Samach, Yoneach, Yoinek, Cholav B'Shabbos Mishum Tzar. And I think the Beis Yosef comes la'afuke from the second part of the Mordechai. And that is why he quotes only Hakal Choyle Neitzel Sino. The Mordechai says, even if there's no Choyle, Tzar, no. Tzar, there is no heter of Amira Lenochri. Only Choyle, and not Tzar. And how about the other way around? If it's too hot, would we say Hakal Choyle? Igros Moshe says no. You could catch a cold, but you can't catch heat. Maybe, I don't know. But the Levush in Sifhei, when he brings this halacha, and the Levush is Marech, and from the Levush Lamadnu, it's not about Choyle. It's not that you're going to become sick. Choyle is like sickness. Kol is like sickness. And the Levush writes, especially nowadays in which we heat all our homes, and it's extremely uncomfortable when your house is not heated. And it is clear in the Levush that the heter is not really because you're going to become sick. And I think the Rosh and Hakal Choyle and Eitzel Tzino clearly indicates it's not that you might become sick, but this is like Choyle. And therefore I think heat and cold will be the same. I think we have more difficulty suffering the heat sometimes than suffering the cold. So the Minchas Yitzchak, Chelek Gimel Simen, Chav Gimel says heat and cold would be the same, and you could call a goy to have him turn on your air conditioner. The Igros Moshe Yordei Chelek Gimel Simen Mem Zayin says no. However, he says, what about a shiur? So there are two different shuvas in Minchas in Igros Moshe. Yordei Gimel Mem Zayin, he says there is no heter to call a goy to put on the air conditioner. And then in Orchaim Chelek Gimel Simen Mem Beis, he deals once again with Amira and Achri to heat your home, and he says in your home yes, but not for a shiur, because for a shiur, let them go davening elsewhere. You can't expect people to leave their homes. Where will they go? But a shiur, they could go elsewhere. I don't think that's a reasonable svara. What do you mean they could go elsewhere? But this is their shiur. This is where they are. This is where they want to daven. So a person could go to his children. Children could go to their parents. You could go to a neighbor. What does it have to do? Just like you don't need to leave your home, you don't need to leave your shiur. But then Moshe says, Tzorach harabim yesh lahakel. So mitzvah the rabbim, we have many sources that were makel by Amira and Nachli. So on one hand, Reb Moshe is machmir, and on the other hand, he is makel. And now we come to what's nogeh l'neinu. So Reb Moshe says, if a goy puts on the air conditioning, you need to leave the room. And it's not the same as we have one candle and he puts on another candle, you can enjoy candle number 2. Because he says you had light. You're having more light. That's not Isra Hanua Memeleches Shabbos. But when he puts on the air conditioner, you're benefiting from the Melucha Shabbos. It was hot and now it's cold. I don't think cold is a chefza. It's just a matter of temperature. And I think Yesod Dvorim, anything you could do without Meleches Anochi, you could do with Meleches Anochi. If it was totally dark, and a guy put on the light, Oser Likrois La'or Haner. Aval Mutar Lechoi La'or Haner. And why is that? We would eat in the dark. You might have your tzitzis dirty, or your kaftan, or your beard, but you still would eat. And therefore you could enjoy the light. But you couldn't read in the dark, so you can't read in the light. So we would sit at home without air conditioning, so you're allowed to sit with air conditioning. It's the same. Then is daiti. You could call a goy, remiza muteres, and enjoy the air conditioning. I think the aside is anything I would do without meleches nachri, I could do and enjoy meleches nachri. That is the principle.
Today in many shuls they have a Shabbos guy. It's an official person. He gets paid 50 shekel or 30 shekel. With the Rav's head to call.
So according to the Zakan Hadin, if he's getting paid, then it's a diorais to throw him out.
What the Rav said in the Rav's kula, that there's no problem of calling the guy. There's no mechzik shluchai because you're just calling him. He doesn't even know when he comes to the house. So there's two common shaylas. First of all, if he comes to the house and he sees your whole house is blacked out and he does chap, or if he comes to the house as a paid, he knows he's being paid, he's getting his 30 shekel. Is there still the head that's not mechzik shluchai? I call that.
I definitely. I don't think there's a difference whether you pay him or not.
No.
I don't think there's a difference.
He knows he's coming out asking to service you. It's Kollel halacha.
It always was the same when you called the guy to your house. He knew that you're not. He's not coming to teach you Rashi. The guy always knew when a Jew calls him to his house that he's going to do a malacha.
So what's talking ahead to that is the Isser Shulchan Aruch for Likrois Lo, because
As I explained before, Likrois Lo is the Isser only when the Etzem HaKriya is telling him what to do, what malacha to do.
Right, so a blacked out house, that's one of the common things, the Metek Rashi pops. So you bring the house, when you open the door, he sees the place is blacked out, he knows exactly what he
Should you do the reason before?
What brings me to say this svara, when we are allowed to call him and when not, is primarily Minig Yisrael. Always. People call the goyim in the situation. I think the svara is a powerful svara. It's not that I'm just saying, svara ba'alma. I think it's very misyashav al-alev, but primarily it is because I think that's the minig. So what would we do if the house is totally dark? But he will only be aware that the house is dark when he's here. So calling him would not be defined as the Isser of Amira. No. When a house is on fire, just approaching the house, he says, generally speaking, because Amira Nochi is a Shus Rabbanan, and because it's a Shus Kal, my natia is B'shasat Chagodel Lahokal. We can't make a joke of Amira Nochi, and it's a big mixture because many people think Amira Nochi is Mutar. But my natia is when it's a real Shasat Chak, like sitting in the dark. I'm not the lahokal, but Amira Nochi, which is not only the Rabbanon, but a Shus Kal. Shus Shein by Ma'aser. And we see Chazal were more makel by Amira Nochi than by other Shusim.
It's also tzarich suda a lot of times.
What?
When it's a metach rashi, a lot of times it's tzarich suda. You always have the itter to fall back on.
Yeah, so it's a mitzvah. Yeah. And the itter is not, it's not a shuti yichidor. Now the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramo don't paskin, but the Ramo does bring that many places there were noita, when it's Tzor Charab and Lahokal. So I still have a lot to talk about by Amira Nochi, but I think my time is up.